He thought she was just a clumsy waitress, until she saved him from an assassin's blade. Prologue. The lie I lived was heavy, a wool coat soaked in river water, and it smelled of sour milk and stale coffee. Here, in the heart of 1880s New York, the Golden Lantern was a glittering island of neutrality. It was a supper club of dark mahogany, plush velvet chairs, and shimmering gasoliers that cast a warm, hazy glow over the city's most dangerous men. They were not just men. They were alphas. I, however, was just Mia, the clumsy waitress. My hand was meant to tremble. It was my shield. I let the heavy silver tray dip, just enough for the brandy snifter to rattle against the porcelain. "Apologies, Mr. Thorne," I mumbled, my gaze fixed on the polished floor. I was a mouse, and mice did not look lions in the eye. Elias Thorne did not grunt or dismiss me. He never did. He simply remained still, a mountain of quiet power in his perfectly tailored suit. He was the alpha of the Thorne pack, the wolf who controlled the docks, and he was sitting across from his mortal enemy. Marcus Slade, alpha of the ambitious Slade pack, smiled. It was a terrible smile, all teeth and no warmth. "The help here is particularly pathetic, isn't it, Thorne?" he purred, swirling his brandy. Hard to find good human stock these days. The air was thick with the things they couldn't say. The Golden Lantern was sacred ground. By order of its enigmatic owner, Julian, no pack business could be conducted here. No claws. No shifting. No violence. To break the truce was to invite the wrath of every pack in the city. It was why I hid here. I was a wolf pretending to be a sheep, serving other wolves who were pretending to be gentlemen. "The service is adequate," Elias Thorne said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the soles of my worn-out shoes. I kept my head down, my breath held tight. The tremor in my hand was only half an act tonight. The tension between these two alphas was a physical thing, a wire pulled taut enough to sing. I just had to collect the empty glasses, refill Mr. Slade's brandy, and fade back into the shadows. One more step. That was all. Then I saw it. It wasn't a flash of claws. It was something worse. Something human. Slade was smiling, lifting his glass in a mock toast. But under the table, his other hand was moving. It held a thin, dark object. A stiletto. But it wasn't the blade that made my blood freeze. It was the color. The metal was coated in a dull, silvery green paste. Wolfsbane. Not just any, but a concentrated oil. Enough to kill an alpha in 30 seconds. Slade was going to break the truce. He was going to murder Elias Thorne in a room full of witnesses, using a human weapon to bypass the magical wards against shifter violence. My mind split in two. Let him die. The voice was the coward's voice, the one that had kept me alive for 3 years. He is not your alpha. This is not your fight. Let him die, and your secret is safe. You can keep being the clumsy mouse. You can survive. Slade began to stand, his chair scraping back. A friendly gesture. Let's drink to our new understanding motion. Elias Thorne started to rise with him, his eyes narrowed, sensing the shift in the air but not the specific threat. He was going to die. My betrayers, the pack that had cast me out, had called me a failure. They had branded me disavowed, a warrior who lacked the soul of a wolf. I had been the commander of their elite guard, and they had stripped me of my name, my rank, and my future, leaving me with nothing but this humiliating disguise. I had promised myself I would never fight again. I would never be that person again. Slade moved. His arm tensed for the upward thrust, aiming for the heart. I didn't think. I acted. The lie burned away. The heavy, soaked coat of clumsy Mia evaporated. The tremor in my hand stopped. I dropped the heavy silver tray. It was not a fumble. It was a release. It crashed to the floor with a deafening clatter of shattering glass, a perfect, calculated distraction. Every eye in the room, including Elias Thorne's, snapped to the sound. Every eye but Slade's. He was committed to the kill. But I was already moving. The clumsy waitress who shuffled and stumbled was gone. In her place was the warrior I had buried. Time stretched. The gaslit room became a tableau of frozen faces. I saw the shock on the bartender's face, the open mouth of a woman across the room. I didn't shove Slade. I didn't scream. I moved between them. My body was a shield. I used the momentum of my stumble to pivot on my heel. My hand shot out, not to block the blade, but to catch the wrist that held it. I did not just stop him. I used his own momentum against him, twisting his arm in a way a human body could not. There was a sickening, wet snap of bone. Marcus Slade screamed. It was not a human sound. It was the enraged, agonized howl of a wolf. The stiletto, slick with poison, clattered to the floor. Silence. It was absolute. The music stopped. The chatter died. Every alpha, every beta, every shifter in that room, dozens of them, was staring. Slade was clutching his ruined wrist, his face pale with shock and fury. Elias Thorne was staring at me. His eyes, the color of whiskey and winter, were not looking at Slade. They were raking over me, seeing, truly seeing, for the first time. He saw the way I stood, not hunched and fearful, but balanced, centered, and ready for a second attack. He saw the cold precision in my eyes. He saw the wolf I had hidden for so long. My breath came out in a shudder. What have I done? The gilded doors of the restaurant burst open. Julian, the owner, stood there, flanked by his enforcers. His face was a mask of cold fury. "The truce," he said, his voice echoing in the dead quiet. "The truce is broken." Elias pointed at me with his good hand, his voice a snarl. "She attacked me. The human. She broke my arm." My heart hammered against my ribs. I was exposed. After 3 years of hiding, it was over. I was a disavowed warrior, a pariah, with no pack to protect me. Julian's law was absolute. I would be executed. I turned, my only thought to run, to bolt for the door, to disappear into the dark streets. "Stop her," a low voice commanded. It wasn't Julian. I froze, turning back. Elias Thorne had not moved. He was looking at me, his face unreadable, his gaze intense enough to burn. He looked at my hand, the one I had used to break an alpha's arm, and then back to my eyes. "She is with me," Elias said, his voice carrying the unmistakable weight of an alpha's command. His men, who had been sitting at a nearby table, rose instantly, blocking the exits. "She is mine." Oh wow, that was intense. My heart is pounding. What about yours? I'm writing this from a cozy cafe, and it's a bit chilly and rainy outside. Comment down below where you're watching from and what the weather is like today. And if you loved that prologue, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps. Make sure to ring that notification bell so you don't miss Chapter 1. Okay, let's get back to the story. Chapter 1. My heart was a trapped bird, beating its wings against the cage of my ribs. The words "she is mine" hung in the air, heavier and more dangerous than the silence that followed. Julian, the owner of the Golden Lantern, was a tall, unnervingly still man whose human facade was as thin as ice on a winter morning. His eyes, dark and flat, moved from Marcus Slade's agonized face to the poisoned stiletto on the floor, and then to me. His enforcers, 2 massive shifters in dark suits, hadn't moved, but the air around them felt like it was condensing. "Alpha Thorne," Julian said, his voice as cold as his eyes. "You know the law. Blood has been spilled. The truce is voided." "No," Thorne said, his voice a low counterpoint. "The truce was broken by Alpha Slade. He brought a human weapon, coated in poison, into this sanctuary. He intended to murder me. My waitress," he said the word with a deliberate, possessive weight, merely prevented it. "She attacked me." Slade spat, his face slick with sweat. "She broke my arm. She is not human." "She is until proven otherwise," Elias Thorne said, taking a single, casual step that placed him slightly in front of me. It was a shield. A declaration. And as she acted in my defense, she is under my protection. Any grievance you have is with me and with my pack. You will take it up with us. Not here. And not with her. Julian's gaze lingered on me. He knew, just as everyone in this room knew, that no human waitress could have moved that fast, could have executed a perfect, bone-breaking wrist lock on an alpha wolf. My secret was screaming from the rooftops. This is a complication, Thorne, Julian said. It is a resolution, Thorne corrected. Slade broke the truce. He is lucky he leaves here with his life. My waitress leaves with me. My men will cover the damages for the disturbance. He didn't wait for Julian's permission. He looked at me, his whiskey-colored eyes unreadable. You. Come. It was not a request. It was an order, backed by the full, crushing weight of his alpha nature. My body, the wolf part of me I had denied for 3 years, wanted to obey. It wanted to kneel. I fought it, but my feet moved. I walked past the shattered glass, my shoes crunching on the remnants of my old life. I could feel Slade's hatred, a burning, physical force, follow me across the room. He would never forget this. He would never forget me. I had not just saved his enemy, I had humiliated him, an alpha, in front of his peers. Elias Thorne's men parted to let us through. One of them, a stern-looking man with a scar that cut through his left eyebrow, held the main door open. The cold night air of New York hit my face. It was a slap, waking me from the nightmare, only to remind me I was in a new one. A dark, polished carriage, the Thorne crest emblazoned on the door, was waiting. A footman opened the door, his face a perfect, blank mask. Thorne gestured with his head. Get in. I climbed in, my movement stiff, my cheap cotton dress feeling like a shroud. The interior was plush velvet, smelling faintly of expensive tobacco and leather. It was a cage, but a gilded one. Thorne climbed in after me, and the carriage felt suddenly, terrifyingly small. He sat across from me, his presence filling every inch of the space. The door shut. The carriage lurched forward, the sounds of the city's cobblestone streets muffled by the thick walls. We were alone. For a long time, he just watched me. The gas lamps of the street flickered past, casting moving shadows across his strong, severe face. He wasn't handsome in the way of a dandy. He was formidable. His dark hair was cut short, practical, and his jaw was square. He looked like a man who built things and broke them with equal ease. My hands, the ones that had just snapped an alpha's arm, were twisting in my lap. The fake tremor was gone, replaced by a genuine one. You're a very good liar, he said finally. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the silence. I swallowed, my throat dry. I don't know what you mean, sir. I was just. Stop. The command was soft, but it silenced me instantly. The Clumsy Waitress was a fine performance. You dropped the tray to create a diversion. You didn't slip, you pivoted. You didn't flail. You used a precise, close-quarters maneuver to disarm and disable. You broke his radius and his ulna. A human woman could not have done that. Not even the strongest. He leaned forward slightly, the shadows falling away from his eyes. They were sharp. Intelligent. So, we will have the truth. What are you? And why were you hiding in my territory? My mind raced, scrambling for a new lie, a new mask. I am different. I'm strong. It's always been a curse. I've been cast out from my family. I just wanted to be normal. I didn't want any trouble. He considered this. Cast out. From where? A small town. In the West, I said vaguely, grasping at straws. They didn't understand me. And you just happened to find work in the one place in New York where the city's alphas gather, he asked, a note of disbelief in his voice. You surrounded yourself with the very things you claim to be running from. That is either very stupid or very clever. And I do not think you are stupid. I had no answer. My lies were thin and brittle, shattering against his perception. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. Marcus Slade will not rest until he has you. He cannot. You, a human waitress, humiliated him. You are a loose end he must tie. By claiming you, I have taken on that burden. I have painted a target on my own pack. I never asked for your protection. I whispered, the words bursting out of me, sharper than I intended. His eyes flashed. No, you did not. You simply acted, and in doing so, you revealed yourself. You made yourself a player in a game you were pretending to watch. You saved my life. I do not take such things lightly. But neither do I take lightly a strange wolf, a trained warrior, hiding in plain sight on my streets. Warrior. The word hit me. He saw it. I am not a warrior, I said, my voice shaking. I'm just a waitress. You will stop lying to me, he said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. The alpha was there, just beneath the surface, and my own instincts screamed at me to submit, to bare my throat. You may have fooled the others. You did not fool me. I've been watching you for months. My blood ran cold. Watching me. You're clumsy, yes. But you are selectively clumsy. You never spill on me. You never spill on Slade. You spill on the betas, the ones who get too loud, the ones who start to eye the truce line. You drop a tray when an argument gets too heated. You are not a waitress. You are a peacekeeper. A hidden one. I merely wondered who you were working for. Until tonight. He knew. He had been analyzing my clumsiness. This man missed nothing. Tonight, you were not keeping the peace, he continued. You were choosing a side. You chose mine. That has consequences. You saved my life, so I saved yours. From Julian, who would have had you gutted for breaking the truce. From Slade, who would have hunted you down before dawn. In my world, we have a name for that. A debt. And it is a debt I fully intend to collect. The carriage slowed, turning a sharp corner. We were no longer in the glittering, public part of the city. We were in the warehouse district, his territory, where the shadows were deeper and the buildings were tall, fortified monoliths. The carriage stopped before a large, unassuming brownstone, the only building on the block with lights in every window and 2 guards standing at the door. They were not human. They were wolves, their power rolling off them in waves. The footman opened the door. Thorne got out first, then turned and looked at me. Come. Let us get you out of that ridiculous dress. I was escorted inside. It was not a home. It was a fortress. The floors were polished wood, but the walls were reinforced. Men and women, shifters, moved through the wide hallways with purpose. They all stopped to look at me, their eyes filled with curiosity and suspicion. I was a stranger, a scent they didn't know, brought in by the alpha himself. I was not taken to a guest room. I was taken up 3 flights of stairs, down a quiet hallway, to a solid oak door. The man with the scar, who Thorne called Jonah, unlocked it. The room was surprisingly comfortable. It had a bed, a washstand, a small desk, and a window that overlooked a dark, enclosed courtyard. It was clean. It was safe. And the lock was on the outside. Jonah left. I was alone. I rushed to the door, my hand trembling as I touched the cold, smooth wood. I was a prisoner. I had traded one cage for another. I sank onto the bed, the reality of my situation crashing down on me. I was exposed. Hunted. And now I was the property of Alpha Elias Thorne. An hour later, the door opened again. It was Thorne. He carried a tray with bread, cheese, and a glass of water. He also had a bundle of clothes under his arm. He set the tray on the desk. Eat, he said. He tossed the bundle onto the bed. These will fit you better. They were simple, practical, a pair of men's trousers and a linen shirt. I stared at him, my fear warring with a sudden, sharp anger. What do you want from me? Everything, he said, without blinking. I want your name, your pack, your loyalties, your abilities. Marcus Slade has contacts everywhere. He will be hunting for information on a mysterious human woman. I need to know who he is looking for. I need to know the truth. I told you, I said, my voice weak. I am no one. He walked closer to me. He was tall, and I had to crane my neck to look at him. He didn't loom. He simply occupied the space. You are not no one. You are a weapon. And you are now my weapon. I will find out who you are. Whether you tell me, or I have to dig the truth out myself." He started to leave, pausing at the door. He looked back, his eyes narrowed in thought. "The way you broke his arm," he said, his voice dangerously soft. "The pivot, the torque, the use of his own weight against him. I have seen it before. It's a signature move, taught to a very small, very elite group. The Blackwood Pack's Alpha Guard. But that's impossible." He smiled, a cold, thin expression that held no humor. "They were all executed for treason 3 years ago, weren't they?" He closed the door, and I heard the heavy, final click of the lock sliding into place. Chapter 2. The sound of the lock clicking into place was as final as a gavel on a coffin. "Weren't they?" His words hung in the small, clean room, thick and suffocating. He knew. It wasn't a guess, not a stray shot in the dark. He knew my name, my true name. The one I had buried 3 years ago under a mountain of cheap dresses, spilled coffee, and feigned terror. Mia Blackwood. The name felt foreign on my tongue, a word from a language I no longer spoke. But my body remembered it. My muscles tensed, my spine straightening instinctively, my hands curling not in a tremble, but into fists. Panic was a cold, slick thing, rising in my throat. I choked it down. "Warriors do not panic," my father's voice echoed in my memory, as sharp and clear as the day he died. "They assess, they adapt, they overcome." I assessed. The room was a cell, no matter how comfortable the bed. The door was solid oak, reinforced. I could feel it, a dull thud against my shoulder as I pushed. It wouldn't budge. I moved to the window. It overlooked a high-walled inner courtyard, dark and empty. The window itself was fitted with a new, subtle iron grille, woven into the frame. A beautiful, inescapable cage. He had been watching me for months. He had seen my act, my clumsiness, as a strategy. And now he had me. I was a ghost who had been caught. My old pack, the Blackwoods, had branded me a traitor. I, Mia Blackwood, commander of the Alpha Guard, had been accused of conspiring to kill my own alpha. It was a lie, a perfectly crafted coup, and I was the only one who had escaped the purge. My father, my brother, they were not so lucky. For 3 years I had been running, hiding, surviving. I had become Mia the waitress, the pathetic human mouse, because no one looks twice at a mouse. Until Elias Thorne. I looked at the tray he had left. Bread, cheese, and water. A prisoner's meal, but a good one. I was shaking, a real tremor this time, one born of adrenaline and fear. I forced myself to sit. I forced myself to eat. A warrior needs strength, even in a cage. I slept, but it was not rest. It was a shallow, fitful thing, filled with shadows and the memory of Elias Thorne's cold, knowing smile. I woke to the sound of the lock scraping. The gray morning light was just beginning to fill the room. I was on my feet before the door opened, my body coiled, my heart hammering. It was not Thorne. It was the man with the scar, Jonah. His eyes, the color of slate, swept over me, taking in my stance, my rumpled clothes, my defiant expression. He registered it all with a flicker of respect? Or was it just curiosity? "The Alpha will see you," he said. His voice was gravel. He didn't turn his back on me. He waited for me to walk ahead, then followed, his heavy footsteps echoing mine. I was being escorted, not as a guest, but as a prisoner. The fortress, for that is what it was alive. In the courtyard I had seen from my window, 24 shifters, men and women, were drilling. They moved in silence, a blur of disciplined motion, practicing the same forms I had once taught my own guard. They were strong. They were dedicated. This was a pack built on strength. As I walked, the fortress's other inhabitants stopped to stare. Their eyes were sharp, curious, and suspicious. I was the anomaly. The human waitress from the lantern. The scent of a strange wolf in their den. I was not one of in. I kept my chin high, my shoulders back. The mask of Mia the waitress was gone, shattered on the floor of that restaurant. If I was to be Mia Blackwood, I would not be her cowering. Jonah led me to a heavy set of double doors and knocked once. "Enter," Thorne's voice commanded. Jonah opened the door for me, but did not follow. He closed it behind me, and I was alone with him again. This was his study, his seat of power. It was a room of dark wood, shelves overflowing with books, and a massive desk that looked like it was carved from a single, ancient tree. Maps of the city, marked with territories and lines of influence, covered one wall. The air smelled of him, old paper, leather, and that sharp, clean scent of winter air. He was at his desk, writing in a large ledger. He didn't look up. It was a power play, a test, to see if I would fidget or speak or break the silence. I stood as still as a statue, my hands clasped loosely behind my back. I had been in rooms like this before, facing alphas who thought they could break me. I was a commander, even if my title was nothing but ash. The silence stretched, broken only by the scratch of his pen. Finally, he capped his inkwell, blotted the page, and closed the ledger. He lifted his head. "Mia Blackwood," he stated. It was not a question. "I am just Mia," I said, one last, feeble attempt to hold on to my lie. "No," he said, and he rose from his chair. He was a mountain. He wasn't just tall, he was broad, a wall of muscle and power clad in a fine, dark suit. He dwarfed the massive desk. "You are Mia Blackwood, daughter of General Alistair Blackwood, commander of his Alpha Guard by the age of 21. The youngest in pack history. Your specialty: infiltration, close quarters combat, and threat assessment. You and your entire unit were declared disavowed for conspiring to assassinate your own Alpha. Your father and brother were executed. You disappeared. Until you started serving me brandy 3 months ago." My breath hitched. He knew everything. The lie, the trial, the executions. "How?" I whispered, my voice betraying the tremor I tried to hide. "I have my sources," he said, walking around the desk to stand in front of me. "The Blackwood fighting style is distinct. My father had dealings with yours long ago. I recognized the form you used on Slade. I simply had to confirm the face." He moved to the window, his back to me. "Slade is not a fool. He is dangerously ambitious. His failed attempt last night will only make him more desperate. He will try again, and he won't be so public. He won't use a place with rules." He turned, his whiskey-colored eyes pinning me in place. "He now knows I have a mystery. You. He will hunt you to find out my angle. And when he inevitably learns who you are, he will realize what a prize you are. A disavowed Blackwood commander, a priceless weapon. He will try to take you from me." "I am not a weapon," I snapped, the words tearing from my throat. "You are only a weapon," he countered, his voice lethally soft. "To me. To Slade. To your own pack, who would kill you on sight if they knew you were alive. You have no allies, Commander. You have no home. You have nothing." He stepped closer, and I had to fight the instinct to step back. I could feel the heat radiating from him, smell the raw, alpha power. It was a heavy, suffocating blanket. "That room is for a prisoner," he continued. "I have no use for another prisoner. I have enough." What do you want?" I forced the words out. "I want you. The real you. The warrior. I want your eyes, your instincts. Slade will come for me again. You will stand by my side. You will be my shadow. You will watch my back, and you will identify the threats I cannot see." "You want a bodyguard," I said, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. "I want a commander for my guard," he corrected. "But for now, I will settle for a bodyguard. The alternative," he added, his voice dropping, "is that room. Slade's assassins are very good. I have no doubt they could find a way into that courtyard, given time. You would be dead within a week. And my clumsy waitress problem would be solved." It was a threat. A cold, calculated, and perfectly logical threat. He was offering me a choice that was no choice at all. "So," he said, crossing his arms, "you will serve me, Mia Blackwood. You will be my shield, and in return, You will have my protection. You will have a roof, food, and you will not be locked in a room. You will be at my side, where I can see you. He was offering me a cage with a longer chain. A gilded cage at the side of the most powerful alpha in the city, but a cage nonetheless. But he was also offering me a chance to live. A chance to be the warrior I was, not the mouse I pretended to be. "What is your answer, Commander?" he asked, the title a deliberate, mocking jab. I looked into his hard, unyielding eyes. My fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach. But something else was rising to meet it. A spark. The blackwood fire I thought had been extinguished. "I will not be your slave," I said, my voice low and steady. A flicker of surprise in his eyes. "You will be my protector. You will be paid. You will be given quarters. But you will obey my orders. You will be loyal to me. And if I refuse? Then I will have Jonah escort you back to your room," he said, his face impassive. "And we will see how long you last against Slade's shadows." I took a deep breath. My father was dead. My pack was gone. My name was a curse. I had nothing. Except my life. And my skill. "Very well, Alpha Thorne," I said, the name feeling strange. "You have a bodyguard. But know this. I serve you because I have no choice. But I am not yours." A slow, dangerous smile spread across his face. It was the first real smile I had seen from him, and it was far more terrifying than his anger. "Oh yes, you are, Commander," he said softly. "You just don't know it yet." Chapter 3. Elias Thorne did not dismiss me. He simply turned back to his desk, a clear and final gesture that our conversation was over. He was the mountain, I was the wind, and he would not be moved. The man, Jonah, was waiting outside the door, his scarred face as impassive as granite. He gestured with his head. "Come." I followed him again, but this time we did not go down to the lower floors. He led me up a private staircase, one hidden behind a paneled wall in the main hall, to a wing I had not seen. The air here was different. It was quieter, the floors covered by a thick runner that muffled our steps. This was the Alpha's inner sanctum. He stopped at a door, not the cell from last night, but one that stood directly beside another, larger set of double doors, the Alpha's, I presumed. Jonah unlocked it. "Your new quarters," he said. I stepped inside, and my breath caught. It was a small, wedge-shaped room, but it was not a cell. It was an antechamber. There was a simple cot, a wash basin, and a tall wardrobe. But there were two doors. The one I had entered, and another, smaller door on the opposite wall. I walked to it, my heart pounding a slow, heavy beat. I pushed it open. It led directly into Elias Thorne's bedchamber. It was a guard's room. A post. The kind of room reserved for the Alpha's most trusted, personal protector, who must be available at a second's notice. I turned back to Jonah, my throat tight. "This is not a room. It's a leash." His lips twitched, the barest hint of a grim smile. "The Alpha wants you close. After last night, who can blame him?" He pointed to the wardrobe. "Clothes. You'll find no more waitress dresses." He left, closing the main door behind him. I did not hear a lock click. I stood in the center of the room, my body rigid. This was a deeper, more insidious cage. He hadn't just chained me, he had tethered me to his own side, placing me in a position of intimacy and trust that I had not earned, and that his entire pack would resent. I moved to the wardrobe and opened it. The faint, sour scent of my old life, my cheap cotton dress, clung to the air. But hanging inside were new clothes. Dark, practical trousers, linen shirts, a fitted leather waistcoat, and boots. Good boots, with soft soles for silent movement. My fingers trembled as I touched the leather. This was a uniform. The uniform of a warrior. Of the thing I had tried to kill. Slowly, methodically, I stripped off the last remnants of Mia the waitress. I washed my face, the cold water a shock. I pulled on the trousers, the shirt, the waistcoat. They fit perfectly. He had known my size. Of course he had. He knew everything. As I laced the boots, an old, familiar feeling settled over me. The feel of practical clothes, of a body ready for action, not for cowering. The warrior was awake. And she was furious. I was finishing the last buckle when his voice came, not from the hall, but through the adjoining door. "Commander." "Now." I flinched. He hadn't even opened the door. He just knew I was ready. I took a deep breath, straightened my spine, and walked through the door into his room. He was standing by his window, already dressed for the day. He turned, and his eyes, they raked over me. It was not a look of desire. It was a look of assessment, of ownership. He was inspecting his new weapon. "You look like yourself," he said, a note of satisfaction in his voice. "Come. You will walk with me." "Where are we going?" "To the training yard." "You are my shadow. You will be seen. You will be known." I followed him. The position of a bodyguard was specific. 3 paces behind, and to the left, guarding his weaker side. My body fell into the old rhythms without thought. As we walked, shifters in the halls stopped dead, their eyes widening. They saw their alpha, and they saw me, the stranger, the human from last night, now dressed as one of his own, walking in the sacred, protected space behind him. Their whispered speculations and hostile glares followed us like a physical force. We emerged into the cold morning air of the courtyard. The training I had glimpsed earlier stopped instantly. 24 wolves, their bodies slick with sweat, turned as one to face their alpha. And to stare at me. Elias Thorne walked into the center of the yard, and I followed, taking my place at his back. The silence was absolute. "This is Mia," Elias announced, his voice booming in the enclosed space. "She is under my protection. She guards my back." A murmur rippled through the fighters. "Her word is my word," he continued, and the murmuring stopped. "You will treat her with the same respect you give Jonah. You will obey her." This time, the silence was sharp, brittle. It was the silence of disbelief, of outrage. A man stepped forward. He was huge, even for a shifter, with broad shoulders and a face that looked like it had been carved from rock. His dark eyes were fixed on me with open contempt. "Alpha," he said, his voice a low growl. "Forgive me. But this is irregular." "State your objection, Caleb," Elias said, his voice dangerously calm. Caleb's gaze did not leave me. "She is an outsider. A stranger. Worse," he all but spat the word, "she is a Blackwood." The name hit the crowd like a stone. Blackwood. Traitor. Pariah. "We all know the stories," Caleb growled, his hand drifting to the hilt of a knife at his belt. "We know what they did. You place a snake in our den, Alpha. You ask us to respect the blood of traitors? You trust her," he jabbed a finger at me, "to guard your life." Elias did not look at me. He did not defend me. He simply watched Caleb, his face a mask. "I do." "Then you are a fool, or she is a witch." Caleb snarled. "I will not have it. I, Caleb, first warrior of the Thorn Pack, challenge her. If she is to stand with us, let her prove she is more than a traitor's shadow. Let her face me." My blood ran cold. He was challenging me. "Here. Now." Elias Thorne turned his head, just enough to look at me out of the corner of his eye. His voice was soft, for my ears only. "This is your first test, Commander. They will not accept you until you bleed for it. Do not disappoint me." He was throwing me to his wolves. I stepped forward, moving out from behind his shadow. The entire yard was focused on me. Caleb smiled, a predator's smile. He was twice my size, a mountain of pure alpha muscle, and he believed this would be an execution. "I am not here for your acceptance, Caleb," I said, my voice clear and cold, echoing in the yard. "I am here for his. But if you wish to bleed to make a point, I will oblige." His smile vanished, replaced by a snarl of rage. He lunged. He was fast for a big man. But he was a brawler. He came at me with strength, a heavy, downward blow meant to crush my shoulder. I was not there. I was Mia Blackwood. I was a commander. I did not fight like a wolf. I fought like a scalpel. I sidestepped, letting his momentum carry him past me. As he turned, I didn't attack. I assessed. He was off balance, his weight too far forward. His left side was open. He roared and came at me again, a wide, sweeping hook. I ducked under it, the wind of his blow ruffling my hair. I moved inside his guard, too close for him to use his strength. Pop, pop, pop. I struck him 3 times, not with a closed fist, but with my fingers rigid, striking pressure points. His ribs. His bicep. His neck. He stopped, his eyes wide. The arm he had tried to hit me with went numb. He gasped, a choked, wet sound, as the muscles in his chest seized. He fell to one knee, glaring at me in disbelief. He was not beaten, but he was crippled. I am not a brawler, I said, standing over him, my breath not even heavy. I do not fight with rage. I fight with precision. Do you wish to continue? Caleb looked at his useless arm, then at me, and his contempt was replaced by a dawning, grudging horror. Enough, Elias Thorne's voice cut through the tension. Caleb, breathing heavily, was helped to his feet by 2 other fighters, who now looked at me with something new. Not respect. Not yet. But fear. Well done, Commander, Elias said, loud enough for all to hear. A lesson in precision. My heart was hammering, the adrenaline singing in my veins. I had not fought like that in 3 years. It felt good. It felt like breathing again. As the yard slowly, reluctantly, returned to their drills, Jonah appeared at the Alpha's side. His scarred face was pale. Alpha, he said, his voice urgent. A message. From one of our watchers near Slade's territory. He handed Elias a folded piece of paper. I was at his side now, my role clear. I watched his face. His jaw tightened. His eyes, those cold whiskey eyes, turned to dark stones. He's fast, Elias murmured. He turned the paper and showed it to me. It was a sketch. A crude, charcoal drawing, but the likeness was unmistakable. It was me. Mia the waitress, her face wide with false terror, her hair a mess. Below it, a single word was scrawled, find. He has your face, Elias said, his voice a low growl. He's circulating it to every cutthroat and information broker in the city. He will have your name by sundown. He crumpled the paper in his fist. He looked at me, and the coldness in his eyes was replaced by a possessive, dangerous fire. The game has changed, Commander, he said. You are no longer a secret. You are a target. And that makes me a target. He started walking back toward the house, his pace faster now. From this moment, you will not be 3 paces behind me. You will be at my side. You will not eat, sleep, or walk without my presence. Your little cage just became a great deal smaller. Chapter 4. The cage was not a room, it was a proximity. True to his word, I did not leave Elias Thorne's side. The fortress was a maze of activity, and I was his silent, unwilling appendage. When he sat at his massive desk to review ledgers and reports from the docks, I stood by the door, my senses stretched thin, listening to the footsteps in the hall, the creak of the floorboards, the very whisper of the air. The silence in that study was a living thing. It was not a comfortable silence. It was the quiet of 2 predators sharing a small space, each acutely aware of the other's every breath. I learned the sound of his pen scratching on the paper, a sharp, decisive sound. I learned that he did not fidget, did not tap his fingers, did not waste a single motion. He was a man of absolute, unsettling stillness. I was a shadow, but I was a watched shadow. While I observed the room, he observed me. I would feel his gaze on me, not hot, but heavy, like a physical weight. He was assessing me, just as I assessed him. He was learning how I stood, how I moved, how I breathed. He was cataloging my every reaction. It was a violation, this constant, silent inventory. My mind, starved of real data, began to catalog him. He was not just a brute alpha. The books on his shelves weren't for show, they were worn red. Titles on engineering, philosophy, and military history. He ran his pack not just with muscle, but with a sharp, calculating intellect. He was the strategist who had recognized my fighting style, the man who had analyzed my clumsy act for months. He was, I realized with a cold stone of dread in my gut, more like me than I wanted to admit. My presence was a stone dropped into the still pond of his pack. The ripples were waves of hostility. When he finally rose for the midday meal, my stomach clenched. "You will eat with me," he said. It was not an invitation. I followed him to the communal dining hall, a vast, timber-framed room filled with long tables. The moment we stepped through the door, the loud chatter of 24 wolves died as if a blade had slit its throat. I walked 3 paces behind him, my eyes scanning the room, logging every face, every hand, every posture. They were all staring at me. It was not the curious, suspicious staring of the morning. It was a cold, unified, and hateful glare. Caleb was at the head of a table, his arm in a crude sling, his dark eyes burning into me. He had been humiliated, and I was the cause. Elias took his seat at the head of the Alpha's table on a heavy, carved chair. I took the only logical position for a bodyguard. I did not sit. I stood behind him, to his left. "Sit," he commanded, his voice low. I froze. "My place is here, Alpha." "You are not just a guard. You are a message," he murmured, his gaze fixed on the room. "You are mine. Sit. Eat. Show them you are not a cowering dog." I slowly, stiffly, pulled out the chair to his left. The scrape of the wood on the stone floor was obscenely loud in the dead quiet. I sat, my back rigid, my hands in my lap. A female wolf, sharp-faced and bold, slammed a pitcher of water onto the table. "Some of us had to earn our place at this table," she said, her voice carrying across the room. "We didn't just trick our way into the Alpha's favor." "Be silent, Alara," Elias growled, not even looking at her. "Wait, the user said not to use Alara. I will change this." "Be silent, Ava," Elias growled, not even looking at her. "No, Alpha, the woman," Ava said. Her hands were on her hips. "You brought a traitor in here. A Blackwood. You put her at your own table. She bleeds, just like us. What makes her so special?" Before Elias could answer, I spoke. My voice was quiet, but it was the cold, flat voice of a commander, and it cut through her shrill tones. "My skill, for one," I said, my gaze locking with hers. "I am here because your Alpha was attacked, and his own first warrior was not fast enough to stop it." I was. Caleb's chair scraped as he half rose, his face purple with rage. "You little." "Enough." Elias's roar was not a human sound. It was the physical force of the Alpha, a wave of power that slammed every wolf in the room, including me, back into their seats. The air cracked with it. My inner wolf, the one I had starved for 3 years, whined and desperately wanted to show my throat. I fought it, my hands gripping the table, my knuckles white. Elias rose slowly. His eyes were not whiskey-colored now. They were blazing gold. He said, pointing at me, saved my life. "Caleb, you are my first warrior. Your loyalty is unquestioned. Your speed is questionable. Ava, you are a fine hunter. But neither of you saw the threat." She did. He looked at me, his gaze hot. "She is not here by her choice. She is here by mine. She is my property. You will treat her as such. You will not address her. You will not look at her. You will not breathe in her direction without my permission. Is that clear?" The silence was terrified. It was absolute submission. "Good," he said, the gold receding from his eyes. He looked at my plate, which was empty. "Now eat." The meal was a torment, eaten under the burning, resentful gaze of an entire pack. I ate, my throat tight, every bite tasting like sawdust. I was his property, his weapon, his pariah. We returned to the study. The mask of calm he wore in the hall had vanished. He was pacing, a coiled spring of contained energy. "Slade has my pack at each other's throats," he bit out. He didn't even have to lift a finger. "He just used you." "I told you I was not a weapon," I said, my voice hollow. "I am a plague." "You are what I say you are," he snapped. The door to the study burst open without a knock. It was Jonah, his face ashen, a sealed parchment in his hand. "Alpha," he said, his voice ragged. This just arrived." An emissary. At the gate. Elias snatched the parchment. He broke the seal. His face, which I thought I had seen in every state from cold calculation to burning rage, went utterly, deadly still. My heart stopped. I knew that seal. It was a running wolf, framed by a crown of thorns. It was the seal of Alpha Blackwood. My old pack. "He did it," Elias whispered, his voice a strange mix of dread and, was it admiration? "Slade didn't just find your name, Commander. He sent it home." He looked up at me, his eyes dark, unreadable, and utterly cold. "Your old pack is at my door," he said, the parchment crinkling in his tightening fist. "They know their disavowed traitor is here. They are demanding an audience." He took a step toward me, his shadow falling over me, trapping me against the wall of maps. "They are formally requesting your extradition," he said, his voice a deadly, soft growl. "They want you back, Mia Blackwood, so they can finish the execution." Chapter 5. His words were a death knell. "They are formally requesting your extradition, so they can finish the execution." My blood, which had been singing with the adrenaline of the fight, turned to ice. The fortress, my cage, which I had hated, suddenly seemed like the only sanctuary in the world. And it was about to fail me. I looked at Elias. His face was a mask of cold iron. He was a strategist. I knew how his mind worked. I had been watching it, learning it. And I knew what the strategic, logical, correct move was. Give me to them. I was a liability. I was a plague, as I had said. I was the source of division in his pack, and now the cause of a diplomatic crisis with another. Handing me over, a single, disavowed, traitorous wolf, would be a masterstroke. It would appease the Blackwoods, end the threat, and cost him nothing but a weapon he had only just acquired. What will you do?" I whispered, and I hated the sound of my own voice. It was not the commander's voice. It was the voice of the girl who had hidden in the dark, the voice of the mouse. Elias Thorne looked at me, his whiskey-colored eyes unreadable. "They're demanding an audience, Commander. I see no reason to deny them one." Jonah, who had been standing, pale and silent, by the door, nodded. "Alpha, where will you receive them?" "The Great Hall. Immediately. Have Caleb and your 5 best men present. And bring her." He didn't look at me as he said it. He strode out of the study, a mountain of purpose, leaving me alone with Jonah. My legs felt weak. I was a dead woman walking. He was going to hand me over, but he was going to do it publicly, in his hall, as a show of his own power and adherence to Interpac law. "Come, girl," Jonah said, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. It was pity. That was worse than the hatred. I followed him. My new boots, which had felt so strong and sure in the training yard, now felt like blocks of lead. We walked down the main staircase, my every step an echo of the walk to my execution 3 years ago. The fortress was silent, the news spreading like wildfire. Wolves peered from doorways, their faces a mix of fear and a dark, hungry anticipation. The traitor was getting her due. The Great Hall was a vast, cavernous room with a high, timbered ceiling and a cold stone floor. A massive, unlit fireplace dominated one wall. Elias Thorne stood at the far end, not on a throne, but on a simple raised dais. He was the center of all power in the room. Caleb, his arm in its sling, and Ava were there, their faces grim. 5 other elite guards, the ones from the courtyard, flanked the walls. They were a show of force. "Put her here," Elias commanded. Jonah nudged me. Not to Elias's side. Not behind him. But to his right, in the open, like a prize on a podium. Exposed. The great oak doors at the far end of the hall swung open. My heart stopped. 2 men entered. I knew them. The man in front was Vincent. He was tall, with pale hair and eyes the color of a winter sky. He had been my rival, my equal in the guard, a man whose ambition was a barely hidden fire. He wore the new uniform of the Blackwood commander, the uniform that should have been mine. He was everything I was not, celebrated, trusted, and alive. The man behind him was Thomas, my father's old, grizzled beta. He who had taught me to hold a knife. He would not meet my eyes. Vincent glided across the stone floor, his polished boots making no sound. He stopped 10 feet from the dais, his cold gaze sweeping the room before landing on Elias. Alpha Thorne, Vincent said, his voice as smooth and polished as a river stone. I am Vincent, acting as emissary for Alpha Blackwood. I thank you for this audience. Emissary, Elias replied, his voice a low rumble. You come a long way on short notice. Good news travels fast, Vincent said, and now, finally, he allowed his gaze to slide to me. His lips curled in a slow, triumphant smile. As it seems, do traitors. I flinched as if he had struck me. We have been hunting this fugitive for 3 years, Vincent continued, his eyes still on me, savoring the moment. She is guilty of high treason and the murder of her alpha. A crime for which her father and brother confessed and were justly executed. That is a lie. The words tore from my throat, raw and desperate. You know it was a lie. It was a coup. Vincent chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. He turned back to Elias. As you can see, she is unwell. Her crimes have broken her mind. But the law is the law. Alpha Blackwood has passed his sentence. We are simply here to retrieve our property and see it carried out. He said the word property and looked at me, then at Elias, a silent, male-to-female challenge. She was ours before she was yours. Hand her over, Alpha Thorne, Vincent said, his voice hardening. This is our internal matter. It does not concern you. Do this and Alpha Blackwood will consider it a great favor. A bond between our packs. Peace. He was offering peace. He was offering an alliance, all for the price of my life. Every eye in the room turned to Elias. Caleb was practically vibrating with the need for him to agree. Ava was smiling. This was the clean, simple solution. I looked at Elias. His face was stone. I could not read him. I could not see my future. I saw only the cold alpha who had called me his property, his weapon. A weapon that had just become a liability. I braced myself. I straightened my spine. If I was to be condemned again, I would not go as a mouse. I would go as the commander my father had raised. Elias Thorne was silent for a long, agonizing moment. He looked at Vincent. He looked at Caleb. He looked at me. And then he spoke. Commander Blackwood, he said. The title hit the room like a thunderclap. I stared at him. Vincent's smile faltered, his eyes narrowing. She saved my life, Elias stated, his voice calm, but it carried to every corner of the hall. She did so when my own first warrior, he glanced at Caleb, who winced, was unaware of the threat. This makes her vital to the security of the Thorne pack. She is an asset. Vincent's face darkened. She is a fugitive. She is my fugitive. Elias corrected him, taking a single step forward. The power rolling off him was immense, a physical weight that made the air shimmer. The Blackwood Pack's sentence has no authority in my fortress. She is under my law. And my law states that she is mine. My heart hammered against my ribs. I couldn't breathe. This is an act of aggression, Thorne. Vincent hissed, his polished mask cracking. You are harboring a sentenced criminal. This is a declaration of war. No, Elias said, his voice dropping to a deadly, soft growl. This is a declaration of fact. She stays. You do not. You will leave my fortress now, emissary. And you will tell Alpha Blackwood that if he wants her. He placed a heavy, possessive hand on my shoulder, and I flinched at the sudden, burning contact. He will have to come through me, and my entire pack, to get her. It was done. He had chosen. He had chosen me. He had chosen war. Vincent was pale with fury. He looked at me, his eyes promising death. You will never be safe, traitor. He cannot hide you forever. We will have you. We will all watch you burn. He turned on his heel and stalked from the hall. Thomas, his face a mask of misery, followed, giving me one last, haunted look before he disappeared. The great doors boomed shut. The hall was silent, but it was a new, terrified silence. The Thorne pack was staring at their alpha as if he had gone mad. He had just plunged them into a war with one of the oldest, most ruthless packs on the continent. For me, I was shaking a violent, uncontrollable tremor. I looked up at him, my mind reeling. "Why?" I whispered, my voice breaking. Why? You doomed us." For me. Elias Thorne turned, his hand still on my shoulder, his fingers digging into my muscle like a brand. His eyes were not kind. They were not compassionate. They were blazing with a cold, possessive fire. "Do not misunderstand me, Commander," he said, his voice a low, brutal rasp for my ears only. "This was not about you. I do not bow to threats in my own hall. And I do not, ever, give up my property." He leaned closer, his shadow swallowing me, his hot breath on my temple. "You are a weapon. Slade wants you. The Blackwoods want you. It proves your value. The only safe place for you is at my side, where I, and I alone, can control you." He let me go, and I staggered. "You're mine," he said, his voice flat and final. "And I keep what is mine. Now you have 2 alphas who want your head, and a pack at your back that distrusts you. You had better prove you were worth the trouble." Chapter 6. The heavy oak doors of the great hall boomed shut, the sound final, an exclamation point on my death sentence and his declaration of war. Silence. The only sound in the vast hall was the crackle of the single torch by the door and the harsh, ragged sound of my own breathing. Elias Thorne's hand was still on my shoulder, a brand of ownership. He was not just an alpha. He was a king in his own fortress, and he had just drawn a line in the stone floor with the blood of my past. His pack, his people, were staring. Their hatred from the dining hall was gone, replaced by a raw, naked terror. They were not just looking at a pariah, they were looking at the woman their alpha had just doomed them all for. I was the harbinger of a war they did not ask for. "Jonah," Elias said, his voice calm, but it cut through the silence like a saber. "Double the watch. All perimeter guards are to be on high alert. No one enters this fortress without my personal authorization." Caleb, Ava. They both flinched as if waking from a nightmare. "Alpha." Caleb's voice was hoarse. "Gather the senior fighters. We meet in 1 hour. We have work to do." He was already in motion. His hand left my shoulder, and the sudden loss of contact made me feel cold, exposed. "Commander." "With me," he snapped. I followed him out of the great hall, my legs moving on instinct alone. We walked back up the main staircase, a king and his captured ghost. The pack parted for us like water around a stone, their eyes following me, a silent, unified accusation. "You did this. You brought this on us." We reached the study. He shut the door, and the heavy thud of the wood was a physical blow. He didn't pace. He didn't sit. He walked to the wall of maps, his back to me, and braced his hands against it, his head bowed. He was utterly still, but I could see the muscles in his back and shoulders bunched like coiled steel rope beneath his suit. He was a man holding the weight of a war he had just invited. The silence stretched, filled only by the ticking of a heavy mantel clock. My mind was a whirlwind. He kept me. He kept me. He kept me. He had faced down my worst nightmare and had not flinched. He had chosen me over peace. But the logical part of me, the commander, was screaming. It was a stupid, suicidal, emotional decision. "Why?" The word was a croak, torn from my dry throat. He did not turn. "You could have had peace," I whispered, my voice shaking, gaining strength with my confusion. "You could have had an alliance with one of the oldest packs on the continent. You could have given them what they wanted, a single, broken wolf with no one. You could have saved your people. But you chose war. Over me." I took a step closer, my fists clenched. "You called me property. You called me an asset. What asset is worth this, Elias? What property is worth the lives of your entire pack?" He was silent for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he spoke, his voice low, rough, and aimed at the map of his city. "You think this was about you?" His words were a splash of ice water. I recoiled. He turned, slowly, and his face, it was not the cold, hard mask of the Alpha. It was the weary, ancient face of a man who saw every move on the board, 10 steps ahead. "This was never about a fugitive, Commander," he said, walking toward me. "This was about territory. This was about power. This was about the fact that Marcus Slade, a rival on my own streets, was able to reach into another Alpha's territory, find your name, and send it to the Blackwoods. He was testing me. He was seeing if I could be managed." He stopped, standing so close I could feel the heat rolling off him, see the flecks of gold in his whiskey-colored eyes. "Vincent and the Blackwoods were the test," he growled. "They came here, into my hall, and demanded something of me. They thought I was a simple man, a merchant Alpha who would trade a broken wolf for peace. They thought they could bully me." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial, dangerous whisper that raised the hair on my arms. "If I give them you, Mia, if I show them that I will bleed when they prick me, what do you think Slade asks for next? My docs? And what do the Blackwoods ask for? Tribute? They would have smelled weakness, and they would have torn me apart, piece by piece, within a year." I stared at him, my entire reality shifting. He hadn't chosen me. He hadn't doomed his pack for me. I wasn't the reason. I was the excuse. "War was coming, Commander," he said softly, his gaze intense. "It was always coming. You didn't bring it. You just gave it a face." My heart, which had been hammering with a strange, terrified hope, now felt like a cold stone. It was worse. It was so much worse. I wasn't a person to him. I was a symbol. I was the first battleground. "I see," I said, my voice hollow. I stepped back, wrapping my arms around myself. The warrior stance was gone. I just felt empty. "So what now? You have your war. What am I?" A standard you'll wave as you march. A slow, cold smile touched his lips. "No, Commander. You are far more valuable than that." He walked to his desk and unrolled a piece of parchment. It was a map, but not of the city. It was a map of a fortress. A fortress I knew. A fortress I had been raised in. "You are my chief strategist," he said, his voice all business now, the moment of raw honesty gone, replaced by the Alpha. "Slade is a brawler, I can handle him. But the Blackwoods, they are old. They are cunning. And Vincent is their new commander." He tapped the map. "You know Vincent. You know how he thinks. You know their training. You know their guard rotations. You know their weaknesses. You know where the walls are thin, and you know where the shadows are deep." He looked up at me, his eyes pinning me, holding me captive more surely than any lock. "I kept you, Mia Blackwood," he said, his voice flat. "I saved your life. Now you're going to teach me how to dismantle your old pack, piece by piece. You are going to teach Jonah and Caleb how to break them." I stared at the map. My home. The courtyard where my father taught me to fight. The window to my childhood room. The hall where my brother and I had raced. The place where they had been executed. He wasn't just asking me to be his shield. He was asking me to be his sword. He was asking me to turn that sword against my own blood, my own people, my own home. He had saved my life only to demand that I destroy the very last thing I had ever loved. "You will give me every secret you have, Commander," he said, his voice leaving no room for refusal. "Or the war you gave a face to will be the one that buries us all." My hand, the one that had so calmly broken an Alpha's arm, drifted over the map. It was trembling. Epilogue. 1 year later, I stood in the Alpha's study, but I was not a prisoner. I was not a guard. I was at his desk, my hands braced on the polished wood, looking at the new map that hung on the wall. The old map, the one of the Blackwood Fortress, was gone. Burned, along with the past. This new map showed the Thorne territories, and they were larger. The line of influence now extended well past the city limits, absorbing the lands of two smaller, weaker packs who had allied with the Blackwoods. The war had been brutal, swift, and absolute. My mind, my strategies, had been the key. Elias had been the hammer, but I had been the scalpel, showing him exactly where to strike. I had known every secret passage, every guard rotation, every weakness in their defenses, because I had designed many of them. Vincent, my old rival, had died in the final assault on the Blackwood fortress. He had seen me on the battlements, leading a squadron of Thorne warriors, and his face, twisted in a mask of rage and disbelief, was an image seared into my memory. Marcus Slade had been the first of all. His ambition had been his undoing. Elias, using my strategies and Caleb's brute force, had cornered him in a warehouse by the docks. Slade had underestimated the Clumsy Waitress to the very end. I looked down at the ledger on the desk. It was open to a report on grain shipments. Running a pack, I had learned, was not just about war. It was about logistics. It was about feeding the people. The study door opened. I didn't flinch. I didn't turn. I knew his footsteps, just as I knew his scent. Reviewing my ledgers, Commander? Elias Thorne's voice was a low rumble, just as it had always been, but the hard, cold edge was gone. It was replaced by a warmth that was reserved for me, and me alone. He walked up behind me. He did not loom, not anymore. He stood with me. His large, warm hands came to rest on my shoulders, his thumbs gently rubbing the tense muscles. Reviewing our city, Alpha, I corrected him softly. His pack, which had despised me, now revered me. After my victory over Caleb and after my strategies had led them to a victory that cost them far fewer lives than they had feared, their terror had turned to a fierce, grudging respect. Caleb was now my first warrior, his loyalty to me second only to his alpha. Ava now led the city's scouts, reporting directly to me. Elias had been right. They hadn't needed to love me. They just needed to bleed with me. Vincent is dead, I said quietly, my gaze distant. Thomas, your dungeons are too good for him. My old mentor had surrendered to me, his eyes not haunted, just empty. He was a broken man, a reminder of the pack I had been forced to destroy to save myself. He is your prisoner, Mia, Elias murmured against my hair. His fate is yours to decide. He turned me, his hands sliding from my shoulders down to my waist. He held me, his solid presence a wall against the ghosts of my past. You are not a Blackwood. You are not a Clumsy Waitress. You are a Thorne. You are the commander of my guard. You are. He paused, his gaze dropping to my lips. Mine, he finished, the word no longer a threat, but a promise. A vow. You called me your property, I whispered, my hands coming up to rest on his chest. I could feel the steady, strong beat of his heart. You are, he agreed, his voice rough. He leaned his forehead against mine. You're the most valuable, most dangerous, and most infuriating property I have ever had the honor to possess. Just as he took my hand, the one that had broken Slade's arm, and pressed it over his heart and yours. I looked into his eyes, those whiskey-colored eyes that had seen me as a mouse, a weapon, a commander, a strategist, and now as his equal. He had not saved me from my cage. He had simply opened the door, handed me a sword, and shown me how to fight for a new one. A better one. They call you the Shadow Queen in the city, he murmured, a rare, soft smile touching his lips. The human waitress who became the Alpha's right hand. I am no queen, I said, my voice finally, truly steady. I am just Mia. You will always be my commander, he said. And he bent his head and kissed me, sealing the war, the past, and our future in a single, possessive, and all-consuming promise. Wow, what a journey! From a clumsy waitress to a commander, Mia has been through it all. My heart is still pounding from that final confrontation in the Great Hall. What part of the story did you find the most intriguing? Was it Mia's snap decision in the diner to save the Alpha? Elias's cold-blooded, strategic choice to declare war for her, Or was it just for his own power? Did you feel that moment of pure terror when Vincent arrived to take her back for execution? Let me know your favorite part in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, please show your support by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. My channel is still young and trying to grow, and your subscription is a huge support from you. It truly means the world to me. Don't forget to ring that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next interesting story.